Okay. Oh, we got some great regulars here. Greg and Heidi and Vincent and Wilbur and Jack.
Hello.
How you all doing? Oh, there's Tim too. Hey, Tim.
Howdy.
Well, it's nice and hot here.
Yeah, it's really cooking out here.
Guess where I am, Nikki.
Guess where I am, Nikki. In the fog. San Francisco. Must be summer, right?
Right. Sure is.
What about you? It must be cold too. A sunset, right? Greg, right? Can you hear me? Somehow. Anyway, how's everyone doing?
I'm doing good. I got help from No Bad Days, thanks to you guys. They sent me my CBD oil and the RSO capsules, and I can't tell you the difference my body's made. I've got all kinds of energy. I can't thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Fantastic. Oh, I am so glad to hear that. Wow. So it just works.
Great. Oh, good.
Excellent. Oh, that's great. And where are those guys located again?
Washington.
Right, Washington State.
It's a little odd town. I'm gonna send them out some Monica's chocolates and some mustard.
All right.
Those are both killer. They're amazing.
Both, right, exactly.
No, you got good stuff up there in Maine.
Have you ever had Dulce? Have you ever had Dulce? It's a seaweed that grows up here in the Bay of Fundy, and you dry it out, and it's unbelievable. It's really good for you. I'll send you out a bag.
Really? Wow, what do you do with it? Just eat it raw like that? Just after it's dried?
Yeah, you just eat it raw, and it's got a lot of iodine in it, a lot of good vitamins, a lot of minerals. It's really good for you.
Is that Fukushima grass?
I don't know.
That's the wrong side of the country. The Bay of Fundy, it doesn't have the biggest tide change of any place in the United States. The high tide and the low tide are like 30 feet different or something like that.
Yeah, we have some tides that run 31, 32 feet.
Wow.
It's beautiful. It's an incredible place, actually. He knows everything.
Yeah, I know. Well,
I didn't know that. I mean, really.
I used to be a sailor too, you know. So the Bay of Fundy. How can you forget something like that? The Bay of Fundy. It sounds so great. So
well, we have an open.
Ed, go ahead.
What was that?
No, once I ate too many mushrooms and I ended up in the Bay of Fungi.
All right, okay. Bay of Fungi. Right,
Returning.
Okay. And Wilbur, how are your
Hey, Ed.
Hey, there's Ed. So, and how are your little girls coming? Your cannabis starts. Oh, they're
right behind
you. Oh, they look really
big.
good. Wow, they're big. Good for you.
Wow.
Wow.
That's amazing. And great too. Yours are like what? Like about this now?
I got way too much nitrogen in my tea.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that. You can burn them pretty easy if you, especially when they're young.
But I love that Greg's growing them in the Sunset District.
Oh.
You would think it's too cold and all that, but you got some nice looking plants.
They're doing great. They're 18 and a half, 19 inches right now. 7 leaves.
Wow, good.
7 leaves.
Uh-huh.
Nice. Very nice.
Okay.
Very nice. Who else is growing out there? Heidi, you got any plants this year?
Yeah, I want to talk to Greg about it because if you're in the sunset, you're in the fog also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Love to learn more about it. What strain
that's
are
right.
Malawi orange.
Is it a city?
No,
Is it a
well,
sativa,
that's interesting.
indica? What is
Malawi, I
the-
never heard of that.
Cultivated it now for 10 years.
Oh,
Really?
Wow.
Oh,
Fantastic.
good for you. Wow.
Wow.
Because we're right under Sutro Town.
Told your mother plant.
It's tricky and wet here.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's fantastic.
The
Yeah,
plants that I have
really,
are supposed to be really good for moisture because I'm in a fog bank all the time also. The ocean's only about a mile away, and every time the tide changes and the wind changes, I get all the fog across my property. So I get a lot of
Wow.
mold.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you get, oh, that's the problem.
what strain?
That's the problem. Yeah.
What
I
strain?
start getting mold in August. I have to really start watching for mold at end of July, August.
Uh-huh.
But it's
Uh-huh.
fun.
Yeah.
I
And what
love it.
strains are you doing? What strains are you
I
doing,
li-
Wilbur?
I got gooseberry skunk and R2. They're all local seeds that were bred by Blue Hill, Getaway Mountain in Blue Hill. And they sent me 50 seeds and I germinated 16 and all 16 of them grew, even though I almost killed them a couple times.
That's great.
That's amazing. No, that's impressive. Yeah, they look super
they're bushy,
healthy.
Yeah, really, okay.
Amazing.
Yeah, they are dark green, but that's not a problem.
No, nice.
They're getting better.
So
I'm just
Vincent-
using rainwater on them, straight rainwater, and now they're starting to get green and get the red stems that are going back to green. I cooked them.
Uh-huh.
So Vincent, do you ever grow any plants?
I used to a long time ago. Hello?
Yeah, you haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, not anymore. I live in a state where you can't do that, so you know how that
Oh,
goes.
right. Yeah, I know how that goes. That's too bad.
Remind us where you live.
I live in
You don't
Iowa.
Oh,
Iowa.
Iowa.
I'm in,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's,
it's I used to live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and
okay.
it was illegal there. And I moved up here, and it was illegal, of course. And all of a sudden, Nevada became illegal. I used to live in Virginia; that became illegal. And I just can't believe they can't make it legal for all of us. You know.
Don't
I
move to
know.
Maine. Don't move to Maine. Everywhere you go, they cancel it out. Stay there. Don't come here. I like my pot.
No. When
No,
he leaves, when he leaves, they make it legal. So yeah, you're already legal up there. So that's the thing. You have to visit every state now, Vincent, and then they'll get legal as soon as you leave.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, put it this way: you got Minnesota's north, they're legal. Illinois is legal. I think Missouri's partially legal, and then you got South Dakota's legal, is right beside us. It's like, look at all this tax money you're missing out on, you know. And
Yeah, right.
What's up with
they do have
Iowa?
less. I don't know.
I was told by the VA last week if I wanted medicine for my nerve damage, I had to get off the CBD. Isn't that
Well,
incredible?
Really?
Yeah, just tell them that actually it's the CBD that's regenerating your nerves. That's what it does. CBD and THC are neuroregenerators, and they build back destroyed nerves, and they build back brain cells. So they don't know what they're talking about. Who was that doctor? A VA doctor?
Yeah. Well, they're protect federally. They can't tell me that I can use it, but they told me if there was any trace of THC in there that they couldn't give me any prescription pills. So I told them to hell with it. I said, it's been 3 years without anything from you. I don't need anything from you. I'm going to keep using this CBD. And now this stuff that these guys just sent me, this is way different than what I made. I mean, it's incredible.
Wow.
Incredible stuff.
That's great.
Fantastic.
Oh, I'm glad.
Lucky.
Amazing. How often do you take the RSO?
I take it at 8 o'clock at night. I take a quarter gram. By 9:30, I'm just a couch potato. I'm just so relaxed. I just sat in there and then I just go into bed. I slept 6 hours. I haven't slept 6 hours since 2013, nonstop, without waking up. It's the first time I've slept that long. And then they give me 3 bottles. There's a red bottle that's for energy, which I put in my, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I put 50 milliliters underneath my tongue. And then in the afternoon, there's a thing called Steady. So I take that. It's even. I guess it's called even. And then there's one at night I take an hour before I take my RSO capsule, which is Relax. And you relax. I mean, it's wonderful stuff. It's incredible. The terpenes, you can taste the terpenes underneath your tongue, the different, like the limonene, and you can just taste it. It's incredible. I'm so lucky that
Fantastic. Oh, that's great. That's so great. I'm so glad they're willing to help you out there. That's great. That's worth a trip to Washington to meet these guys.
Come as Wilbur.
What do you got there, Jack? Is that one of your buds?
No, but it is a local grower. I finally found the source.
All
Yeah,
right.
excellent. Great for
Yeah.
you. Good for you. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Oregon.
It's
They got
nice
good
soil
weed.
grown.
Are you growing any of your own this year up there, Jack, in your first year in there?
I started 3 and a mouse ate them.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, there's
Everything just
Hi,
like
Heather.
uprooted them. Yeah.
darn.
No, we're starting a little garden of flowers and vegetables and sprouts and
Got a
stuff.
garden of ferns.
God, it's so lush up
Hello,
there.
Heather.
I'm
Welcome. Welcome to Swami.
Hang
Hello,
up and
Heather.
you can't hear anything. I'm gonna hang up and call.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So Jack, we had some mice eat some of our starts as well this year, right? We had the
More than some, about
they ate
30.
a lot of them. Yeah.
They lived underneath where we were sprouting them, and they had a salad bar. They came up, and the whole family, they just had fresh left, and they wiped out about 30 or 40 starts. It was tragic.
Yeah, they loved it. But so we started more and we put them
Right.
up on a table that they weren't able to get up on, and now it's working. But we did get a lot. They didn't get all of them. That was the good thing. So we got a lot of cultivars going. Lots happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it's looking good out there in the garden. In fact, we're getting a lot's in the ground now, a whole lot. So we've only got a few left to get in the ground.
Yeah, because we had that gender testing done by LeafWorks, Eleanor Kuntz, and we got the results back in about 5 days. So we put the plants in their final beds. Well, last week we put most of them in, and we have a few more to go this coming week. But that's at least a month earlier than we used to do it, when we had to actually, look for the males and look for the females, visually every day.
Right. No, it's really great. It's also really interesting to see how some cultivars just make more males and some make more females. It's kind of, you just hit or miss,
Well, I think it's already in the seed. We just don't know which seed is going to do which, so it's
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
okay.
Okay, can you hear us, Heather?
Apparently not. I don't know.
Wait, unmute yourself if you can hear us.
Unmute.
Let's see. I wonder
Okay.
where she is. It looks kind of foggy outside of her window too.
Heather, you're on mute. You're unmute.
Oh.
Oh, she went off.
Oh, she's having some technical difficulties.
Beyond our
seems.
control.
It seems, yeah. We'll see if she makes this. Well, in the meantime, we can tell you some stories.
What stories you got, Nikki?
Let's see, what should we tell you about now? Hey, Cam,
Oh, hey, there's Cam. How you doing?
nice to see you.
You're muted again,
Now-
so there.
Now I'm unmuted.
All right.
How are you guys?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Okay. So we've been asking other folks. Oh, hi,
Hey,
Marty. Okay. Have you got some little girls started out in your garden this year?
We
Yep.
do.
Oh, he sure does.
We planted 4 last year. We got 5 this year. So all different varieties.
Okay.
So it's fun
Oh,
watching them. I can already tell it's like they're already differentiating in character. All 5 of them are very different personalities. So
All right. Well, that's what we call research and development, R&D, the different kind of varieties that you can grow.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
yeah. No, we even do that. We do a few sessions here. It's good to do. Okay, let's see if it's gonna work for Heather. She's kind of at an angle, but let's see.
All right.
Can you hear us?
Hey, I can hear
You're on
you.
mute.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
I had to.
Can you
log
turn
in
your
on
phone
my-
the other way or something?
I can't hear what you guys are saying. Can you say that again?
Turn your phone because you're actually horizontally vertical or something like that.
I think I will turn it as vertical for you.
Yeah,
maybe
there you
go.
look like.
I don't think I can get that though. I'm sorry. I hate to say it, but there's like my phone has a plug in the bottom of it. It's gonna be cockeyed, I think, is where we're at. My computer.
Oh, that's good.
seems-
That's good.
Well, that's better than the other one. Okay.
That's plenty good. Where are you calling from, Heather? Where are you?
I live in Benbow in Southern Humboldt.
Oh, you're right up in Benbow. Okay.
Oh, that's just
Yeah.
up
Not
the
so
road.
far at all.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
where are you guys
Beautiful.
at? I know you're Mendo, but I don't know where in Mendo.
Yeah.
Bell Springs Road.
Just
So
right
no
off the
Bell
101
Springs-
on Bell Springs Road?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you kind of go up Bell Springs about 4 miles, and then we're down in a little valley. So
Oh,
not far. We're the
nice.
far northern end of Mendo, so we're practically the Benbow's about from our ranch. Considering the dirt roads, it takes about almost an hour to get to Benbow.
Yeah.
But as the crow flies, it's probably 20 miles at the most.
And Benbow's a beautiful place for all you folks that don't know it. It's I guess that's where a lot of the logger barons lived, right? Back in the day of when it was heavy logging around here. And I mean, I just know the Benbow Inn is so amazing. That's up there. And
Yeah.
it's just a really nice area.
Well, yeah, the Benbow Inn's a very classy hotel, kind of English style and so on. So if you're ever coming up here, that's the best place to stay.
Oh, yeah.
It's really
So see,
nice.
it's happy
I
420.
basically- I'm sorry, go ahead, Nikki.
Oh, I just said it's 420
420.
time. So happy 420,
Oh.
everybody.
I have my space gems. I just took them.
Ah,
was-
okay. Good.
I was gonna sit outside and smoke a joint, but it's just too hot.
No, you're
It's
right.
really
Yeah, no.
So
Yeah, well, today's the coolest day in 3 days because 2 days ago it was blistering, really,
Dude, it was
really
like
blistering.
103. Were you
Yeah,
guys over
yeah. People-
100 or no?
I don't know if we
I
got
di- I
over
didn't look,
100. I
yeah.
don't think so, but it was close.
No, people just don't think it gets that hot up here in Northern California, but we also get snow, which other people don't realize too. We get, do you get snow where you live?
Not in Benbow, not really, no.
Oh.
Yeah, we do.
Oh, you're lower altitude,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's right. So that's why it's hotter there.
So
for sure.
anyway, this
Yeah.
is Heather Burke, everyone. She's an attorney working in the cannabis sphere. And we're going to have her talk about a bunch of things that she works on. And so thank you very much for being part of our session with Swami.
Have you always focused on cannabis in your legal practice, Heather?
Yeah, always. So I've been a lawyer for 10 years. And when I came out of the gate, my very first job was for Omar Figueroa 10 years ago. But I sought him out because I was seeking cannabis attorneys because I'd already done a dispensary trial, which eventually set precedent in the state, People versus Jovan Jackson. And so I got to work on that case and basically do most of that case and set it up for the attorney that was the trial attorney at the time. And I did that because I wanted to work in drug defense and I wanted to work in cannabis, particularly because I'm a pretty hardcore deadhead and came out of that
Oh,
kind
really?
of Hate Street, San Francisco, Grateful Dead kind of life. And so I had all these friends all over Northern California, and where I'm from Southern California, but Southern California, the Bay, but all the way to the East Coast. And, we all were really connected through cannabis when I was very young, 12, 13, 14, and going out on the streets when I was pretty young. And, I think I was on Hate Street I was young. Looking back now, it's like if my kid did that, I would go crazy if my son, was on Hate Street when he was at Young or on Grateful Dead or whatever. But that's how I got into
Tell us
it.
more about that. Tell us more about that. So what were you doing on Hate Street? And you're 12 years old now. Wait a second, that's pretty hardcore.
I was probably on Hate Street by the time I was 14. It was probably like 14, 15, probably 12, 13. I'm from Southern California. So 12 and 13, I was probably not there, but I was like kind of moving in that direction. I feel like a lot of young people, particularly in cannabis, particularly free thinkers, are raised in these, come up in families that sometimes are like, something's not right here, and my family was hardcore religious, like very gnarly, born again. Like, I mean, think of the worst case, born again. Those were my parents. So
Really?
so very young, I was like, this isn't right, like something's off here. And I could, I found a lot of solace, a lot of like friendship in hippies. And like somehow that came to be when I was younger. I'm not even sure how it all kind of happened. And so at some point I was like, peace out, I'm going to Hate Street. And then it just kind of told its own story. Like at that point, like making that massive of a move as a young person to like get the F out of a unhealthy situation and like go out on the street, which you might think would be unhealthy. But it was much healthier than where I was. And so like I developed this whole new family through Grateful Dead, and I'm still friends with those people today. Some of them still could be clients or colleagues or just friends around. I mean, I have been getting calls since the day I was born as a lawyer, like from my Grateful Dead people with all sorts of drug defense cases. And, I think that helped me be successful because as a brand new lawyer, I was getting very gnarly cases, like high profile LSD cases, high profile cannabis cases, like, and a lot of that had to do with just the networks, like that we have built as Grateful Dead. And some of that was reggae too. I'm very much into reggae and now more into reggae than Grateful Dead. But from that reggae, Grateful Dead, the kind of counterculture scene, we've developed a network, a relationship. And so a lot of times people will come to me, and many times it was like, hey man, I've only been a lawyer 2 years. I can't take this like 20-year mandatory minimum federal case, but Tony Sarah can. But like, Omar can. Some of these other lawyers that were like ready to do those cases. So even though I wasn't able to do them myself as a young lawyer, I did a ton of super huge, super high profile cases, but some of them were like, oh my God. And a lot of them I didn't necessarily want to work for my close people. So, it was helped me to like develop relationships with people that were lawyers that were doing the kind of drug defense cases that I felt called to, and to be a bridge for my community that was kind of like counterculture, and what cops would call like the drug community. But like, I always thought that was so derogatory because it's kind of like, yeah, maybe like, mind altering substances are a part of our community in many ways, but most of us, I think, are in it for really healthy reasons. And like, making connections with plant medicines and, all the knowledge that comes with, plant medicines and psychedelics and, living a counterculture life. It was such an invaluable set, like knowledge, like an invaluable skill set that came from that there's like nothing that will ever compare to that. And I feel really grateful because I just feel like every step has got me to here.
So I have a question, Heather. So just to get this chronologically down. So you leave home at 14 and you got into law school. I mean, how did you even finish high school if you kind of dropped out? How did that happen?
I didn't drop out. So I would say I got into it when I was like 13 or 14, maybe a little bit younger, that I started like listening to the music and started to identify. And then I was probably like 15 or 16, once I got my driver's license was when I was really out of there. And like, when I got my driver's license, that was when I was just like, oh my God, there's this whole world out there. And I could get myself to it. It was so exciting. And so when that happened and I got my driver's license, I went to college in Ocean Beach, San Diego for about a semester. And I would say I didn't drop out of high school. I've always gotten really good grades. And so I went to college for about a semester, and then I dropped out to go on Rainbow Gathering tour. And I like went to a bunch of rainbow gatherings. And then, you know, from there, I just took like about 5 years, 8 years, something like that. So if that was like 17, and then by the time, yeah, it was probably about 5 years. When I was 24, I had my son. And then I was like, okay, well, now I have a kid, let's get serious. And so I went to college, and I just started at community college when my son was 2 months old. And I just put him in a sling, and I just took him to, you know, class with me. He was on my back or he was on my front, and took him to class with me. It was very hippie. You know, a lot of people in college were like, who is this hippie lady? And my son is 19 now, which is so cool. And he lives with me here in Southern Humboldt, but he's gonna go to, or he's at HSU. He's at Humboldt State University. But basically that's it, is that like at some point I kind of started going out to the shows and started, you know, meeting all these people and developing these like kind of nationwide, really in some ways worldwide connections. And then had my son. And then I was like, okay, well, I need a way to feed him. You know, I need a way to like make money. I've always been good at school. I could go to school. I could put him in the HSU daycare. They have this excellent daycare. So I could put him in the Humboldt State, you know, University daycare, go to college, get grants, take loans, not have to deal with it. And so I just did that. And then I kind of kept doing that. And then when it was all done, I'm like, cool, I've got great grades. I got a lot of loans now. But it all worked out okay. It all worked out so great.
So impressive. And, you know, and they like to say that stoners are lazy, you know.
I know. Always even seen that, but you know,
where'd you go to law school?
I went to law school in San Diego at a school called California Western, which is a pretty good small private school. And they gave me like a pretty significant ride. So I got accepted to some other schools, but they gave me the best deal, even though I still owe them a crap ton of money. But
that's a drag.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Right.
Being a lawyer, you should be able to make that up soon, I hope.
Well,
I hope.
The story of like Grateful Dead, Hate Street, Tony Serra, Omar Figueroa, that's right up our alley. I mean, I had a studio on Hate Street back in, what year was it? 69, 70. You were probably there quite a few years later. And then that's when I first met Tony Serra. And, then we met Omar recently. And I've been to a lot of Dead shows back in the old days.
Nice. Yeah, it really is such a community, you know. It's Absolutely. So fun to be like, people don't get it when they're just like, oh, I'm in New York and I could go to a show and like see people that I've known for 20, 30 years. At this point, 30 years, you know, like, well, no, that's not true. I'm 43. So, you know, knowing people I've known since I was 13 and 14, and you could see them at shows, and like people from the mainstream don't quite understand that. They're like,
no, that is,
how do you know somebody? But it's kind of the same thing in cannabis. I feel like in cannabis, we're also developing, and maybe even more so, you know, maybe even more historically important, we're developing these like connections and community, even though like we're in different regions, you know, there's, you know, even outside of California, we have like, you know, Oregon and Washington, there's all these legacy cannabis producing communities, and Appellations works into that, and like community works into that. And so like, it's really kind of exciting to see, like, this is why I always say, like, maybe we were trained for this moment, because like maybe that whole thing with the Grateful Dead or with reggae touring or whatever, that like, you know, we were all just training for this moment with cannabis, where like now we get to do it, but not, you know, we're amazing, you know, we're not necessarily feeding one band, a bunch of money. We're like distributing that money, throughout our communities in this really kind of exceptionally cool way. And so I see it all as training for today, like everything that we've done.
Yeah.
Today was
Yeah.
what
Right.
it's for.
You mentioned there's an
Right.
international level to it also. And Nikki and I spent a lot of time in Goa in India. And so there's a Goa India community, just like the Grateful Dead community. In fact, there's a fair amount of overlap there as well. But, we can go to any place in Europe pretty much and somehow find someone from that community. And all of a sudden, we know a whole bunch of people who are local. We know local restaurant. We probably never even have to get a hotel, stuff like that. And this kind of community, and that's a cannabis community as well, but mostly hashish, right? Not the flower, because all of that Indian community, mostly they all smoke hashish, or charas as we call it, usually mixed with tobacco and so on. But it's, again, that international community. And that's part of the fact that the cannabis community goes back 20,000 years, right?
To India.
And
To go.
Oh, yum.
It's totally, there's some hash there.
Great,
you've heard.
that's beautiful.
Okay.
Nice little ball
Okay,
there.
great. Oh, I didn't see your name before, Craig. Welcome to the show, Craig.
So you guys must be neighbors.
Yeah, he's
you
up
and
just
Heather.
out of Benbow. Craig is up there. Okay, great.
Exactly.
Is that
Exactly.
Craig Alpenhoe? Is that
Yeah,
Alpenhoe, Craig?
exactly.
Oh, yay, Craig.
Exactly.
I can't see it. Maybe it's on it.
Fantastic gathering you have going on. I sure appreciate it. And I appreciate all of you. This is amazing. 420 is a great time to spar it up too. It's coming from some chores, and before we do our evening, I was able to come in and hang out with everybody. This is awesome.
Great.
Oh, it's good to see you, Craig.
Top flight, one of the best cannabis growers up here in the mountains, and he's just like 20 miles away as the crow flies too. So welcome on board. So anyway, you also, Heather, you mentioned the word appellation, and so as you well know, that's one of my pet things that I've been working on for a long time, and that also connects into the international community. But why don't you talk about appellation from your perspective, and what it means for the small farmer and for the consumer?
Yeah, so I'm a huge advocate for appellations and for terroir-based appellations, which in my mind is meaningful appellations. Appellations that actually mean to a consumer, something that's real, something that's verifiable. And in California, we're so lucky that our the organizations, the policy and trade organizations that represent so many of the small farmers and the legacy producing regions, that they were successful in their policy achievements, which I'm sure most people on this call heard about, with the terroir-based appellations last year, and getting it into statute, state, California statute, that the cannabis to be eligible for an appellation designation has to be grown in the ground and flowered essentially under the sun. And like, it's so exciting to have that be a baseline, have that be the mandatory requirement for an appellation program. And really, for like so many farmers, I feel like we already know what appellations are, but for anybody that, isn't, like most of us are what I call appellation heads, who like spent so much time talking about it because it's that important. But for anybody that's new, basically an appellation is a region that is designated on a label and communicated to a consumer via product labeling that says where a product is from. And to be an appellation, like a true appellation, it actually has to not just be from that place, but be of that place. And that's different, right? Because you can have a greenhouse or an indoor grow in Humboldt County, and you can have an outdoor or potentially like a light depth, or, something where there's still like a lot of, I guess now that I think about it, the state has gotten rid of the light depth. So I won't even talk about that, but, for outdoor, it means that, the cannabis has been touched by the terroir. It's been touched. It's been by the wind, by the climate, by, the moisture level, like when the fog rolls in, the type of wind and whether it comes off of, you know, the ocean air or the river air, or, you know, flows through a certain channel to come up, or, I mean, there's 1,000 things. I can't even think of all of them because it's really very scientific. And those things have been proven in wine and I mean, just like almost any other, you know, agricultural product to like actually affect the product's yield, like how the product tastes. And so that kind of like taste, you know, the taste of place is really what the terroir, you know, means. It's like how that place really truly influences that product, which of course a place can't influence a product if it's grown indoors and doesn't have access to the place. So it's really this exciting thing that California was, you know, and not easily, it was very difficult and cumbersome and in some ways dramatic, you know, to get this very simple rule that like an Appalachian cannabis, you know, has to come from that place in a way that like requires it to be grown in the ground. And if you have a program that is not, you know, that means something, that shows the consumer for real that this place is, you know, this product is of this place. And not just like this product was grown in a warehouse of that place. And not that there's anything wrong with that. Like I really support indoor cultivation, particularly if we can get it in a way that, you know, is environmentally sustainable, which I think we could do. I mean, there's so many technology advancements that of course we could have environmentally friendly indoor cultivation. And indoor cultivation has allowed us to evade detection from law enforcement during Prohibition for decades and decades. You know, indoor cultivation allowed us to be hyper, you know, innovative and have all this like innovation in our genetics. And that's one of the reasons why Northern California in particular, like has this like exceptional, like genetic, you know, baseline of like what we're working with is like unheard of in some industries in terms of like what our genetic diversity is, or at least pre-legalization, you know. It's like so exciting. And a lot of that comes from the fact that we had to grow indoors. We were forced to innovate. And so it's like kind of exciting. Like I don't want to kick indoor out of the program. Like to me, it's a part and parcel of where we are, you know, and what we're doing in California cannabis and why we're unique. But appellations have to stand in a very unique category because that category is really supposed to, you know, appellations, the way they're defined in international treaties and international intellectual property laws, the TRIPS agreement and shoot, I'm forgetting what it is. There's the two of them. And you know, the way that they're defined, it's like, it has to designate, you know, it's supposed to designate to a consumer that the product is, you know, its quality, its characteristic is essentially or exclusively due to the place, to the geographic place. Well, how do you say a product is essentially or exclusively from a particular place? There has to be the link between the place and the product. Well, what is that link? And that's where the science comes in. And that's what's so exciting, that because we were able to set that terroir baseline, that standard that the plants had to be grown in the ground, they had to be of the place, which was no given, you know, that was very hard and dramatic work. And once we got that, now it's up to us to show the consumer that the product really is truly of the place. And that's a different question. And that's what we're embarking on now as a community. And I think that is super exciting because we already had one big win. And now we get the second big win that all of us in cannabis who have been here from the beginning and who are going to stay here until we die, like we all know that like we can prove this. Just give us some time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what they call a defensible argument, that it is a product of the place actually determines the product. And I just want to put in a plug to for Origins Council, which has been kind of spearheading this whole political movement up in Sacramento, talking to various representatives, senators, and so on. And but the project kind of started with what was called the Mendocino Appellations Project back in 2015 and 2016. And we did focus on Mendocino because that's where we were from. That's what we knew. And we just said, and then it got it got into the state law as appellation, but it didn't necessarily connect it legally with the actual place of origin. It just had the idea of standard of practices and so on. So the fight that that Heather's talking about is what was it? Last year, a law was passed that required it to be planted in the ground without mechanical light or light after it flowers. And that was a key thing. The second, I call it the second win, because the first one was to get appellation on the law to begin with. Because there's no other thing in the United States, there's no other agricultural product that has a true appellation. Now, a lot of people in the wine industry in the US, they say it's an appellation, but technically it's legally not an appellation because it doesn't stipulate any standards, practices, or varietals. It just says it comes from that place. So for cannabis, we have this idea that this is connected to the place, as you so eloquently said, the terroir and so on, that it expresses that. But that science that we go through will make that claim defensible, because we'll have water analysis, we'll have soil analysis, we'll have meteorological weather analysis and all of that within a certain boundary. And the key thing is about it has to be a group of farmers making a petition. And maybe Heather, you could talk about how a farmer would get together with other farmers and create a petition to create an appellation.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's a really great, statement, Swami, about like how it came to be and where we're at and all the other fun stuff. And I gotta say, like, that statute that was about getting the plants in the ground and flowering under the sun, there was, pre-Prop 64, there was a lot of political maneuvering. And because I sometimes work in policy, I hate working in policy. It's like you could work in litigation with a federal prosecutor trying to put your client away for 20 years. And like, they're nicer, and more like, I'm sorry, this is my job, than sometimes in cannabis politics from somebody who is also from the industry. I mean, it is so freaking cutthroat sometimes that like, I don't even know if I'm cut out for it. You know what I mean? So seeing people with these kind of power plays has been really illuminating to me. And I'm not quite sure I'm like fully recovered from that same issue. Like I haven't fully gotten back into appellation policy since that, because some people, I'm so disappointed in some people who are advocating so hard for anti-terroir baseline, and how some of these folks and some of them lawyers, and like can represent the small farmer.
We had to make a political deal. We offered those people city of origin. And that has to do with the whole indoor group. They say, okay, if we give you city of origin, give us appellation, because appellation has to be outdoors in the ground. And say, okay, because in truth, as you said about indoor, we've owed so much of our innovation in terms of plant nutrition, not just genetics, but how to feed the plants and what they really need. That all happened indoors. And so now we take that knowledge and, so there's no question of that. There are specialty growers indoors in LA, in Oakland, and Sacramento, and San Francisco, that these people are, actually big brand names. Isn't Cookies indoor, right? So, all those things. So that's a huge thing. And I've just been working on a paper about the environmental impact of cannabis as opposed to everything else. See, people talk about, if you have indoor grow, each joint costs like you got to drive across the United States in a Volkswagen 16 times to, use that much. Well, that's a lot of bullshit because, but the fact is that cannabis, if you grow indoors, you're not making any bigger carbon footprint than there's made for one single serving of meat. Right? Your hamburger, so let's compare agriculture to agriculture, right? Cannabis is agriculture, and its footprint of indoor is equal to the footprint of your hamburger, and it's equal to your glass of wine, both in terms of water use and actual carbon emissions and so on. You can look this all up, and it's like, so we compare that to other thing. Indoor isn't worse than anything else. It's more or less in the middle of all other agricultural products, even though it's indoor. But if you go outdoor, then there's almost no carbon footprint from outdoor because we use the sun, we don't have fans and dehumidifier, so on. So that's a big difference, that cannabis can be much, much more environmentally thing. But even the worst part of cannabis, the indoor, is still on a par with all other agriculture. So don't blame us for the climate change. You know, let's all get stoned and figure out ways to solve it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we need to figure out ways to solve it without otherizing, you know, and like being like, oh, you grow this way, or your practices are this way. It's like, okay, to be an appellation legally, it needs to be essentially or exclusively of that place. That's the freaking international intellectual property law. We didn't make that up. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like, and yet that doesn't take away anything from anybody else that's producing in any other way. And once we get these systems and market share, you know, in the collaborative, well, maybe not in a collaborative way, but hopefully in a collaborative way, once we get those kind of settled, or once the market settles them, they all have a place, you know.
Right,
and
yeah.
so it's kind of
the indoor people need to have a standard, what do they call it? A best practices guideline. And that is to say that we're doing our best environmentally in terms of carbon, in terms of whether we put in carbon dioxide, do we put in sulfur, all those things, how much are we putting out clean water? And then you have a best practices for, and they give them a certificate. It could be even a private thing, not a government thing. And therefore the customer knows that this indoor is grown with the least environmental impact that they can do, that they have solar panels on the roof, et cetera, et cetera. And they make that a standard for them and an award.
Yeah. And I think that like increasing the pressure on those folks, you know, is something that we probably as either environmentalists, I guess, or we're coming in under, but I think we do have some kind of responsibility to kind of help shape the market as it relates to indoor, you know, and how it works in, or should work. Because one of the, like, I say this all the time, people talk so much smack about cookies. Like I live near the cookies dispensary in Piercy, and at the One Log House in Southern Humboldt, and you're like in the middle of nowhere, you're driving for an hour and a half without seeing anything, and then you see this boom, cookies everywhere, and it's like, oh my God. You know, but I love going to that dispensary. I love my other dispensary too, Country Club in Redway. I go to both of those pretty regularly to get my Space Gems, which is my main gig. I love Space Gems so much. And so you go to that dispensary in the middle of nowhere, and there's kids there, there's young people there, there's like things happening. And like even at Emerald Cup, the last time we had an Emerald Cup, because last year was canceled. And so, you know, the last time we had an Emerald Cup, I don't know if you guys remember the Cookies Dome, and that line was out the door, you know. And then we had a regenerative cannabis area where there was maybe 6 to 10 regenerative farmers. I think it was through Flo Connor or something. You guys might've been a part of that. And it was dead. And so I think, you know, that shows me something, like we know that, you know, regenerative is required. I think regenerative cannabis farming is the cannabis farmers' commitment to climate change. That's what we are doing as our deliverable to where we're at in life, and what the, you know, what the world has delivered to us as people in our, you know, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, you know, like people who are in it, who are in that world. Like we have a commitment that we have to, just by being alive during climate change, you know, to do something. And to me, in cannabis, regenerative farming is that, like, the first step. You're not just sustaining what is, but you're actually regenerating harm done by somebody else. And so to me, that's so important. And what a travesty that the young people are like missing the whole regenerative thing. And then they're standing in line for 3 hours at the cookies, you know, at the cookies thing. And it's like, I don't need to harsh on cookies or say even one negative thing, because I don't feel even one negative thing towards them. I support that is what the young people are buying. I mean, hello, like they're successful, and that's hard in California cannabis. So whatever they're doing is working. What is it that like regenerative farmers, you know, could be doing to reach that same demographic, which is young people, people of color, you know, which a lot of times in Northern California, in particular regenerative farmers, a lot of times we kind of leave that out. We leave out people of color out of our marketing and branding. We leave out, you know, and Appellations in particular, it's like a very white, male, you know, dominated area of cannabis. but so is everything else. It's like, it's not unique. So what is it that we do if we know that we care and want to be different? Like, what are the things that we can do? And I think that, we see cookies and people do talk a lot of smack about them, but in my mind, it's like, well, they're doing something that works. If you see the lines at Emerald Cup, and we're not in the regenerative farm. So what do we do to meet that gap? And for me, Appellations is one of those things.
Yeah, Appellation, but also apparently we need a rock group or a
backup
rapper
burner.
who's going to be a regenerative farmer, rapper or something like that,
Yeah, they have the celebrity there.
The
Yeah.
celebrity. Well, obviously
come.
it's going to happen.
Yeah, they'll come. I mean, enough
Yeah,
fires, like some rapper's house burns down and they get on the regenerative tip or, something because of climate change or, something else. Like people, I have a feeling that eventually a lot of folks, and it may take, 5 to 50 years, but I have a feeling that like more farmers are going to be moving that way towards regenerative, away from degenerative, and at least sustainable. And I hope the market mandates that they stay at a sustainable, that they practice sustainable practices. That's my hope.
Yeah. Well, that of course, the word sustainable is kind of a very vague word, and everyone is going to define it sort of differently, right?
Yeah.
And, we're talking planet sustainable, and anyone who thinks they're sustainable and still is using petroleum, they got at least one more step to go. So we're all involved in it, as you said. And I like that word deliverable. That's a great word in terms of what the cannabis farmers can do as a deliverable, to say, okay, we're doing regenerative, we're reducing our plastic, we're using only natural water, all these different things to reduce our impact. And of course, much of that is mandated in California by the various state agencies, right? Because we had to get approval from the water resource boards for the water that we get out of our spring and the water and so on. And then also we had to get approval from the water quality board for anything that, all of our discharge, all of our chemicals, all of our petroleum, and so on. And then had to get approval from the Fish and Wildlife for the pond and the bridge and the roads. And so it's all of that. So actually, in terms of environmental impact, the farmers up in the mountains have been more scrutinized and nailed to regulations than just about anybody else.
Yeah.
So we're trying hard and we're working at it.
Yeah, I think it's true. Like I wrote this article for, I forget what, Marijuana Business Daily or Marijuana Times, or I forget what article, what company it was for, but Marijuana Venture Magazine. And it was about, cannabis farmers and regenerative farming. And, I read all these articles on PubMed about hemp actually, helping with carbon sequestration. And I can't find any about that for cannabis, but I can find a lot for hemp, at least 10 articles that talk about how cannabis like actually sequesters the carbon, which is so exciting because, not only can like our practices, help and be regenerative, but the activity itself is regenerative because it can suck cannabis out. And somebody told me that was a controversial position. So I don't know what the science is. I'm not a scientist, but somebody told me at one point as a controversial position that cannabis sequesters carbon. But I went back and double checked those sites and they're all. What?
It depends on what you do with it in the process, because if you take all your cannabis waste, stems and stalks and the big leaves, and you compost them and wood chip them and put them back into the soil that you took it from, then you are sequestering, right? Because while it's growing, it definitely is pulling out carbon and putting. The other thing is that the cannabis roots, they put out exudates, which are basically sugars which contain carbon. So they can take carbon out of the air. That's what plants do. It takes carbon out of the air and it puts it back into the soil while it's living. And likewise, if you take the all your biomass that's left over, then you can also, that also goes back if you compost and wood chip it. And so that's part of regenerative techniques right there. And the other thing is that cannabis is what's called a bioaccumulator, which means it pulls up out of the soil many things which are pollutant or negative things in the soil. And so when you take that out and then you, I'm not sure what you do with that, but if you were to compost that, those, you know, they did that in Chernobyl. They planted hemp everywhere, and that then pulled out all of the radioactivity from the soil, right? And so I presume then what did they do with that hemp?
Yeah, right.
Did they compost that hemp, shred it and so on? And where did it go? I'm not sure. But anyway, it's part of the way that, you know, cannabis is part of the solution if we pursue it in the right way, right?
Yeah, that is exactly how I feel. And one of the reasons why I'm so wildly in support of regenerative cannabis farming. And as a lawyer, I'm not doing it myself, you know, but a lot of times we'll give discounts to regenerative cannabis farmers, or sometimes I'll write off bills entirely depending on, you know, who they are and what they're doing. And that's my way of helping. And, you know, I do my own stuff at my house in Bembo, but it's not it's kind of you know, I've been working in cannabis for so long, you know, that it's the only industry I can be in. And I, you know, feel like the way I can best help is to make sure that those farmers are as set up, you know, as they can possibly be in a way that's going to protect them. And so that's why I became a lawyer, because I wanted to protect cannabis farmers. And at the time that was criminal defense 10 years ago. That was all there was. So I was a criminal defense lawyer, and, you know, I was really good at it. I won all the time, but some of that was me. And some of it was because I had amazing mentors, most notably Omar, of course. And some of that was just that the time in history was ripe. You know, it's time in history right now, you know, and where we've been over the last few years for cannabis to kind of show up in society in a different way than it did under prohibition. And so you know, to me, it's okay. So now we're moving cannabis farmers and cannabis widely into a more kind of normalized, you know, less prohibitionist position in society. Well, that is great, wonderful. It's so much better than getting busted all the time in a lot of ways. In some ways, there are some cons, but for the most part, I think it's better to not get busted. But what the society we're moving them into has a crap ton of problems, you know, and one of those problems is we have a very corrupted system of commerce. And, you know, there is so many ways for cannabis farmers and people, legacy producers, anybody in cannabis, and good person. And so, you know, for me, I was just kind of well, one thing I'm really good at is paperwork and reading and analyzing, you know, statutes and laws and contracts and So it was a way, you know, to become a business lawyer was really, you know, me trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I live my dharma? How can I live what is my truest, you know, calling? And for me, I love to be analytical. I love to be scholarly. I love to read and write. And so it worked out for me that that was the way that I could support those people who are doing that work. And so that's how I came to this place. Was it just, you know, it allows me to really utilize my talents, what makes me unique as a human being, and support that passion, which is, you know, those people who are doing that work. That is carbon sequestration, that is bioaccumulation, that is you know, all this other stuff, the plant medicines, and it works out really great. I love it. It's I'm so grateful every day. I mean, it's just an amazing situation, you know, so all of us.
I remember I was just looking back, the last time I saw you in person was at the DemPure Regenerative Farming Conference right across the street from the One Log House.
Oh, right.
And yeah, and that's, what's that, almost 2 years ago now or something like that.
Yeah. It was right before COVID. I think COVID was on its way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a great conference. If people don't know about that,
Yeah, well, yeah, but actually people came from all over the United States for that conference. In fact, Wilbur, there were a bunch of people from Maine who flew out because they'd been doing Korea natural farming, and one of their teachers was there and so on. So yeah, we were talking weed for 3 days up there. It was
That was
far
so
out.
fun. I will say though, like after that, I got so sick.
Oh, really?
And it was like, that
Oh.
was January and COVID hit mid-March. And so I don't know if it was that. I mean, I think every time I smoke joints with 1,000 people, I get sick.
That is true. We've learned now, everyone has their own joint now. There's certain things that who knows we do not go back to. Because in Europe, you know, everyone has their own joint in Europe. They run because everyone knows, you know, their hash and their tobacco mixture, their favorite hash with their favorite tobacco. So in Europe, no one passes the joint, right?
Yeah.
But here, that's part of our hippie culture. And we always ask every one of our guests, how old were you when you smoked your very first joint? And you may break the record on this. And who's turned you on, and where was it?
I was probably 13, and it was a high school footballer, and Jack would probably know his name. And I remember that, Jack, I'm going to say this name because you'll probably know it if you're on here. I think he is on here, but Nicole Bremner, who was my best friend when we were like 13, 14, 15, and 2 football players. I can't remember. And they gave me a joint, and we smoked this joint at one of their houses after school one day. And I remember I didn't get high. I did not get high. That's the main thing I remember about that. And my friend was so high. The guys were very high. I remember trying really hard, and like it just didn't work. And that was probably, 13 or 14. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I forgot that you and Jack went to high school together or something, right?
Yeah. It's really funny
love
because he's not the only one. There's so many people. So we went to school in San Diego, but in the hills outside of San Diego, about an hour out into the mountains there. I forget what that mountain range is called. But, you know, if you drive up into the mountain range about an hour from downtown, you'll hit, you know, a bunch of mountain towns. And we lived in one of those. And it's really interesting because you can see, you know, you can run into people from that tiny little mountain town all over. Like I was telling you, run into people, you know, from New York and, you know, Grateful Dead lands and in, you know, anywhere. Like I could be in the middle of nowhere in the Mideast and like run into somebody. And some of that's Grateful Dead, but a lot of that also is whatever that community is that we were raised in. There's a lot of people that seem to have either moved into cannabis or moved to Humboldt or even Nevada County where I just lived. There was like 6 people that I went to high school with that lived there.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Was that must have been big, not a big high school though, right?
I think the graduating class was probably, I think there was maybe a total of 2,000, 3,000 kids in the school. So it wasn't tiny, but it wasn't massive.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
I think
And
that's
who was
right.
that football player?
That's a good, I can't remember what his face looks like. It's so funny, but I can't remember. It saved my life.
Wasn't me. I played basketball.
Jack played basketball. You remember it. I'm gonna like email it to you when I remember who it is because I can just picture the guy's face. And I remember they were like making fun of me because I wasn't like stoned, you know? So I think that's why like I felt so bad that first time. I'm so embarrassed that like I've just been making it up for with this like high dosage of THC.
So the second time?
I don't remember the second time, but I can tell you like it never ended from there, you know. Just it started.
I see. Okay. Okay. So now let's go back to the Grateful Dead. Did you actually see them live when Jerry was alive and so on, when you were that young?
No. So because Jerry died when I was 17 or 16, he died when I was 16 or 17. I think it was 17. I didn't. So by the time that I went out on tour, which was probably like, I think I probably like went and did a couple shows when I was 15, and those I just went into the parking lot and never went in. Yeah, I didn't realize, I didn't know it was like a thing. I didn't even understand. So for me to even get from our rural town to like the parking lot when I was 15 was a big deal.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
And so then what happened is he died, and I was like still kind of like halfway living at home, or like kind of being around or whatever, living at friends or whatever. When he died, I was like, oops, because I've been kind of like walking this line, you know, and had never really like jumped fully in. So literally the day that Jerry died was the day that I was like, shit, I made a mistake. I was supposed to leave home. I was supposed to like do my whole thing. And so that's when I was like, okay, I'm going like full, you know, like street kid, and like never moved home after that. Before that, I had kind of like, you know, been back and forth and done kind of like the street kid thing, but like I had gone home and like whatever, I was kind of flirting with it, you know. And like I came from a pretty waspy, like middle class background, very born again, super religious, but I was like mostly pretty waspy. And so like, you know, to me, it was like this whole new exciting world. And so when
Nikki and I used to go to concerts over in Oakland, right?
Well, actually in Golden Gate Park when I was a teenager.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I saw them at the old Fillmore. I saw them at the old Fillmore one time, and we were at Jerry's memorial out in at the Polo Grounds in Golden Gate Park. But
I went to
we
that.
used to see him pretty often. Oh, you were? Okay, yeah.
Oh, you were there? Yeah, because it was just like,
You too, Craig?
Yeah, so I like went up and like went to Haight Street like right then and was there and like didn't leave after that. I feel like I always kind of felt like
Robin Williams.
Yeah. For so many years, like I had friends that would tell me, like, I remember the time that was one friend that was like, you can't tell anybody that you didn't see Jerry. Like, you can't tell anybody that, like, that's a secret. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I didn't see Jerry. Like, I'm not going to pretend that I did. And so I remember that's always been a big issue with my girlfriends because, you know, like, and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to pretend, you know? And so when I went out and like did it when I was, you know, and finally like really went like, and lived on the streets and like had a Volkswagen van and did the whole thing. I think I was like 17 when I fully did that and like fully disconnected with my house, my parents and whatnot. And I always felt like I was missing something, you know, like for so many years, I felt like I did something wrong, or I was like born at the wrong time, or, you know, all this stuff. And it wasn't really until kind of I started getting really passionate about cannabis and what we were doing in cannabis and for NorCal cannabis that I realized like I didn't miss anything with, you know, the Grateful Dead. It was training. And I'm here now at this like super historic moment. Like Jerry's so historic and all that's so historic, but like, and that changed society. Of course it changed society. But cannabis, what we're doing now, like all that, sometimes I feel like the Grateful Dead was training for what we're doing now. You know, and so many of us do have that kind of baseline, and not just Jerry, because it's like, you know, Bob Marley and reggae and all that other kind of stuff too. Like,
not just
yes, not just
either,
the Dead,
because the whole hippie community. You know, I had a studio on Haight Street, you know, in '69, and it was even sort of past the biggest surge of it. I was there 68, 67, I was there. But this whole community, it wasn't just one. That was the point of it. It was thousands. And there were so many groups at that time, not just the Dead, you know, Jefferson Airplane, who became the Starship, and Santana, and Quicksilver Messenger Service, and I mean, all these others, you know, who knows all these different groups. There was just this bursting out of breaking from the 50s, right? And then, of course, the LSD was everywhere. But then it went into
my favorite part.
Other thing, speed hit and cocaine hit, and we went through those doldrum years and so on. And now, you know, cannabis came back in as our guiding light, the ally that never left, right?
The ally that never left.
Yeah, and because cannabis is the everyday psychedelic, right? It can just alter that, take that edge off, alter that perspective, and give you that sort of insight to slow down and really, 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 really pay attention. And that's what, that to me, that's the divine presence. When you yourself are really, really, really paying attention, totally focused on whatever it is. And that's love. And that's intensity. And cannabis helps you get there. And that's why it's the everyday ally.
So Heather, I have a question. When
Sure.
cannabis started to become legal here in California, did you find that like the focus of being an attorney around it shifted? I mean, do you now work with people to get compliant, or are you still working with people that are getting busted?
Yeah, it shifted drastically for me. So before legalization, quote unquote, even happened in 2016, I started like shifting a little bit over to the business side of things. And then it was probably 2018 that I was like, no more enforcement work whatsoever. Maybe 2019 2019 is when I think I put out a blog that was like, I don't do any enforcement work. If you have even a CDFW or water board ticket, like call somebody else, you know? And most of that was for unregulated farmers. Like if somebody was regulated and they had an issue, I would probably help them with it. But, and part of the reason was because, you know, I think that I feel a little bit bad about doing no enforcement related work, including no criminal defense, no administrative defense. So administrative defense is like somebody gets a county ticket for growing, which, you know, once that kind of shifted over in 2016, we saw a lot more like county tickets, like red tag type of things. And every county has a little bit of a different procedure, but those are essentially administrative procedures. So administrative enforcement or kind of traditional criminal law enforcement. And, you know, what I kind of saw happening was that the people who would call me and be like, hey, I can pay your $5,000, you know, to go litigate this to death, you know, in these administrative forums in a county, you know, board of supervisor or county administrative hearing, or, you know, CDFW or water board administrative hearing or something like that. The people that had the money to, you know, hire somebody to fight those kind of tickets post legalization, were the generally like white males who are kind of blowing up the hills, you know, who were a lot of times hiring like, you know, Latino or, you know, women workers, maybe potentially, I don't know in all situations, but potentially maybe not paying them living wages, certainly not regenerative in 99% of the cases. And so what I was noticing is that the people who called me were kind of these like jerks. They were very like, you know, you should be able to get me off of this, because we have been getting people off of much bigger cases for many years, you know, because that was the law, but the law changed. And so when that law changed and people wanted, you know, lawyers to get them out of, you know, these kind of administrative citation, land use type of tickets, you know, land use and enforcement actions, those are a way different ball of wax. And when they started putting the per plant, per day fines, you know, like there, you couldn't even really like litigate for the purpose of saving time so they could get to harvest, which really I shouldn't even say it that way, because legally lawyers aren't really allowed to litigate for the purpose of harvest. If the harvest is an unregulated harvest, that's illegal. We can't help somebody commit a crime. Lawyers are not allowed to do that. We're limited by our ethical rules. But a lot of times, you know, in the olden days before they had the per plant per day fines, it was like, if we had a good faith belief, like they had a correct amount of, or a reasonable amount of recommendations, like physician recommendations per plants on site. We had a good faith belief that was a legitimate garden under the old rules, collective and cooperative rules. And so we could litigate that all day. Sometimes that would take 2, 3, 4 months. You know, if that citation came in September, it was like, no problem. This is great. But once those per plant per day fines came in, that really changed the ball game. And you saw a lot less people fighting, and the people who could fight were these people who were like, you know, had the lawyer and the fighting back as part of their cost of doing business. And to me, those people were generally the ones who were like, wasn't that I don't want to support them, it's that, you know, I only have a limited amount of time. We're in such a critical moment in history that like, I don't have 2 seconds to give to somebody who's not trying to get into compliance. I have, you know, I have 100% of my time. 130% of my time, more time than I have to give, is needed for the people who are trying to get in compliance, who are trying to do it the right way. Those people need so much protection that for me, there's amazing criminal defense attorneys out there, amazing civil and administrative litigation attorneys out there. So for me, it was very easy, when that time, shifted from the old world to the new world to say like, I ain't doing that anymore. And so no harsh to the people that are doing it, to the people who are still in the legacy, that haven't been able to shift into regulation. Like that's a different scenario, but that wasn't who was calling for the lawyers.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah. And then I realized I was really good at business and I really enjoy it. I love it. And it's kind of like where I was always meant to be. I feel like I'm very good at contracts and like to the point that, I feel like I'm a contract expert at this point.
Yeah, Nikki's been reading contracts and she says, how could anybody be good at this?
How could
It's
anyone
like-
enjoy it?
It's
Yeah, really. Wow.
Well, we actually
I'll tell
really
you-
need people like you.
Yeah.
One of the main
You're
things about
important to all-
contracts. I'm sorry, Nikki, go ahead.
I was just saying, you're very important to have somebody like you out there to help people like us. Yeah. What were you going to say about contracts?
Is one of the things I think that's so important is that most contracts suck really bad. Like they're in these like horrible language, like it's very formal language. A lot of times it doesn't make sense. And so one of my things has always been just distill it down to plain language. And when sometimes it could take like a 40-page contract to make it like a 3-page contract, take all the crap out, and you just distill it down. And so being able to do that for my clients and for my community has been really great because I feel like there's been explosion in understanding of what the contracts do when we can say, hey, okay, cannabis farmer, can you read and understand this? And once they can read and understand that, it does them the service of educating them on what it means to be an entrepreneur. What does indemnity mean? What does, I don't know, any contract clause, damages, venue for litigation if there's a dispute. I don't know, all the random things you see in contracts, all the basic stuff. That is stuff that like for sophisticated entrepreneurs, they don't need lawyers for because they had lawyers teach it to them so many times that they understand the concepts and then they can just make the decision once they're in it. And so, a lot of times, like if you're a winery, you're selling grapes or you're selling wine or whatever it is, and you're doing that, you're going to have pretty standardized contracts over a period of time. You're going to have your purchase and sale contracts. You're going to know when things comes in on terms, maybe some licensing deals. You're going to have contractor agreements. They get standardized for a business, particularly like a small business, like a farm or a winery or something over a period of time. And those entrepreneurs at some point get experienced enough to do it without lawyers. And so when we can take that legalese and distill it down to plain language, it shortens everything. It makes it way easier. It educates the client. And I think it is great because then they don't need lawyers as much the next time around.
Right. No, that's great. That's wonderful to know that you're out there helping people like that.
Yeah, really.
Because it's overwhelming. We're coming from being hippies, from just growing weed illegally for so many years.
And told
which
never to
really
write
was
anything
easier.
down. There were no contracts. It was a
Never
nod
did.
and a hand, and everybody either trusted everybody or you were out of the business. Basically.
And there's still a lot of, I see a lot happening with, especially farmers dealing with distributors. The distributors sometimes just don't make up contracts. They just figure nobody cares about it. They just don't do it. Things like this, where it's still got this laissez-fairness about it that people aren't quite, realizing, and that we have to grow up. We do have to grow up a little bit here. We do have to take things more seriously and protect ourselves. But, we also like to fall back into just being mellow hippies, It's kind of a tough decision sometimes.
Yeah. And my goal is to get it to the place where the mellow hippies can be the mellow hippies, but we have the contracts in place that protect them. So if something goes sideways, something goes sideways all the time. Like we can't stop stuff from going sideways. Contracts aren't going to stop stuff from going sideways. They're just going to set the parameters so that when stuff does go sideways, we know who's taking the loss. And that's one of the things that bums me about the distributors that, are refusing or declining, I should say, to do written contracts is that like, I don't think it serves them. And I don't think it serves the community. I think it's like a fear of contracts, or it's just like a distributor contract could be a page and a half. You don't really need that much. It's just like, okay, you know,
Right.
who
Right.
who is going to pay for it if the cannabis is damaged in transport or damaged in storage? You know, these are some of the main things that to think about, particularly for bulk, which a lot of farmers are selling bulk. Not everybody. I think you guys have a really great branded product, but
Right. No.
it's a
Yeah,
and
but
then
having a brand is its own expense rather than selling in bulk, where you don't have all the process of branding. But we're having a great time doing it, so it's part of our enjoyment, part of our retirement at old age.
Yeah.
and you guys are looking great doing it. I mean, from an outsider's perspective, looking into your brand, like the two of you both are, you know, both present in the brand. It's not just Swami your face. It's like, it's communicating to the consumer something way different. And that is what is a hope for so many small farmer brands, that it's not just like somebody's face. It's that somebody's face communicates that there's like multiple people who are working on it, that there's a vibe behind it, that this is how we care for the earth, this is how we care for each other, this is what it means to this brand to be in cannabis. And I love that. I mean, I just think it's, I know not all small farmers are going to have their own brand.
It's always part of our statement. But no, for me, it was always part of it is that it's a male and female working this, you know, and, you know, like there's certain things I do pretty well and certain things I can't do at all, like balance a checkbook or anything like that, you know, and that's not Nikki's favorite thing, but she's very good at the business part of it, right? So, you know, if you can do that kind of, you know, amiable division of labor, but I was always about it's us for doing that, and it's a male and female, and no one has precedence. It's just the way we work it.
I love that. I love that so much. And it's like, you know, bringing appellations into it is a whole new thing, you know, like you think about a product label. So sometimes when I'm presenting on appellations, I'll show a picture of a wine label, and it will show like the winery name, the winery logo, the winery location, like the actual farm name. For many wineries, the sub appellation, then the, you know, predominant appellation or the major appellation or the main appellation, whatever, you know. And then for cannabis, we also have county of origin and maybe even city of origin on there somewhere as well. So, you know, you think about all these types of things. So even for like Swami, you have Swami's name, you have Swami's logo, you know, the farm site, the sub appellation, which, where are you guys at?
Yeah.
What region?
Yeah.
What
So
name?
what we say, we're Bell Springs appellation is what we're considered in Mendocino County. So
yeah, there you
those are
go.
both on our, yeah.
So Bell Springs appellation, and then, you know, County of Mendocino, and potentially there's another sub appellation or something in there. You know, each one of those that we just went through, name, logo, farm site, appellation, potentially a sub appellation, county of origin, potentially, you know, all those are 7 just potentially on one label, 7 different pieces of intellectual property that are being communicated to a consumer. And so those 7 different pieces of intellectual property have different laws that attach to each of them. So to protect your name, you would have, you know, generally a trademark. To protect the location, you would have, you know, trademark potentially for the farm.
And it's showing our bottle there.
Yeah.
No, it's a lot of information to put on a small jar. Thank God for the QR code. That's all I can say.
And then all of those have separate laws that attach, and potentially separate contracts and separate, like, you know, you're going to license somebody your name, you know, does that mean they can use their appellation? Of course not, unless the cannabis is grown in that region. But, you know, some of those things get really like confusing and add on to it all of our history of like having difficulty with contracts and So one of the things that one of the reasons I'm so, I think, attracted to appellations is because for me, it's an intangible asset, but it's one of our most valuable assets, and that we should protect. And to protect that, we need to do that by protecting it, by registering it, or, you know, whatever we need to do which depends on the type of intellectual property it is. And then making sure we're using it in an appropriate way. And And that's where like contracts comes in. So that's another reason why like working in this area of law is like so important to me, because it always comes back to protecting, to leveraging what our legacy in the marketplace, so that our people in this legacy region can be more successful in the market. And it's also interrelated. It's so exciting. It's so exciting. I can go on forever.
I have another question for you. Are you working with the International Cannabis Bar Association? Are you affiliated with them?
A little bit, yeah. So I'm a member of INCBA, and I'm on their appellations committee, and I am, that's about it right now. I have been the chair of their advocacy committee before, but I recently resigned from that to focus. I mean, the advocacy is so amazing, but it's international advocacy, and I just need to focus on the Emerald Triangle and Sierra Nevada right now. So, but yeah, they're a great organization. I like them a lot.
So Heather, I just wanted to say one thing before we close up here is you're right up there, not so far from us. This coming weekend on Saturday, we decided to host a little farmers picnic here at our ranch, because let's just face it, we all work so damn hard and we never take a day off. And it's when we do see each other, it's either virtually at a meeting or at a board of supervisors meeting, or, it's always about politics and work. So we're going to just have a time for farmers to come by, and legal farmers, and kick it back and, share some good weed, have a potluck. If you want to come on down, I'll send you the information, and I'd love to have you join us. Omar and Lauren will probably be here. At least I know Lauren will, hopefully Omar.
Oh, awesome. I would love to. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I will be in Hawaii on Saturday.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a great excuse. I love that one.
I'll be there tomorrow morning. Actually, I'll be in Hawaii. I'll be very excited.
You've got to go pack now, right? So anyway, thank you so much for being with us on this session with Swami. Very, very informative, and your perspective. And I love that concept of, regenerative as a deliverable. We'll work on that one. And thank you so much. And,
really, it's
for all the work you do for all the farmers and so on. And
thank you.
Great to have people like you out there for us.
Great.
In a couple of weeks, our guest is going to be Chris Van Hook, who's the founder of Clean Green Certified.
Yeah, he's great.
Amazing guy. And we've been with Clean Green Certified since 2011 or something.
Yeah, 2011.
And it's a great program to get your cannabis certified and make sure it's clean for the public out there.
It's the same thing as a U.S. Department of Agriculture, but you can't use those words. So he calls it Clean Green. But he actually, I think he still is an actual lawyer attorney for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. He trains other people to be organic certifiers. So he set this up, and it's the same as the organic certification, actually.
Yeah, it's cool.
So well, that's rad. I knew he was a lawyer, but I didn't realize he taught for the USDA. Well, thank you. If I could come next time, it's always actually kind of been something that I've really wanted. I think I saw one time a year or two ago, you were having a gathering. I was like, oh, I wish I could be invited. So next time, if you do have one, please invite me. I would love to pop down. I'm not.
Okay. Heather, absolutely. And thank you so very much. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you. Aloha. All right.
And we're grateful Dead family too, in an extended way. Grateful Dead.
It's great to see all of our gang out there. Love you all.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much. Stay high.
Love.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.